I'm Dan Carney. This is the Speed Skating Video Podcast. Let's go. All right. My guest today has been in a couple of Olympics, 88 and 92, a few World Championships, a host of World Cup appearances. He's done a fair amount of coaching over quite a number of years and is a real student of the game, and recently has started a very popular and growing YouTube channel called Speed Skating Deconstructed. Hopefully you've all seen it. Mr. Jeff Klaiber joins us today. Hello, Jeff.
How you doing, Dan? So glad to be on your channel.
Oh, that's nice of you to say.
Yeah.
Been doing a lot of recording lately. Going to have a lot of blackout dates coming up ahead for me because I'm also still, training and I have a career. So it's fun to fit these in where I can.
Let's stop you right there.
Oh, all right.
Okay, so you got into the sport only about 4 or 5 years ago, right?
Actually, I'm starting my seventh season.
Season.
It may not look like it, but...
And a hockey background, right?
Yeah, I played hockey for a long time. Then I took a break. Then I started coaching. And then when I coached, I got into men's league, and it got me back on skates. And then I got terribly tired of men's league. And because I live in a city with an oval, I was kind of attracted to the sport, and I felt like I could still skate, but I couldn't put the puck in the net anymore. So I thought I would see if I could be good at this.
No puck, no people, no stick. It's different going down that straightaway.
Yeah, it's you and the clock, and it's also you in a skin suit. So I had to make a significant lifestyle change to even consider doing this. And all kidding aside, I've told people before that I really feel like the sport saved my life, because I was overweight, drinking every day kind of middle-aged guy. Drinking beer and eating pizza in the locker room after games, thinking that passed as being active. So that's a
very interesting. So it's not just speed skating; it's actually a life change for you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's no question. Yeah, thanks.
That's a bold move. That's a bold move to go from hockey. I mean, I played hockey as a kid, but get on that big oval, that's very different. So I want to ask you one more question, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
About your channel. I mean, you're a Masters champion, and you're 7 years in the sport. You're bringing a lot to your channel, and it's kind of long form. So what is it you want to do with your channel to bring to speed skaters around the world?
I guess the initial vision for it was the fact that the sport is very small. And what I mean by that is, when we take the United States as an example, a lot of times when we do a competition, we combine competitions because we only have a couple of indoor ovals, right? So you might have a World Cup qualifier, which you would think, okay, it's just going to be the top, 20 skaters, but then they combine an Am Cup with it. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting there lacing up my skates next to Brittany Bowe. And because of that, you have this access to people and coaches, and the sport's very small. It's very accessible. There are no other sports where I go out on a training day and I get to share the ice with the top skaters in the world.
Yeah.
You don't see that in any other sport. They're literally. And as I've gotten to know the people, I enjoy the people. I enjoy their stories. I thought this could be a forum for people to tell their stories, whether they're an up-and-coming skater, they're an active skater, they're recently retired. And plus, I've always been hypercritical of people that do interviews that aren't prepared.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll put myself on the spot, and I will see if I can prepare and ask good questions. I loathe small talk.
Yeah.
When I meet somebody in line, waiting for coffee, I am desperate to ask them an interesting question, or I want them to ask me an interesting question. So I think that's what it is. I spent some time with Sarah Warren the other day, and I told her that I have an undergrad in engineering, and I now have a master's in Sarah Warren, because I did an enormous amount of research because
Yeah.
I wanted to ask her good questions. And to me, the most flattering thing is if I ask you a question and I have you sit back and say, wow, that's a really good question, then I feel like I won.
Yeah.
And conversely,
Interesting.
if I do
Yeah.
something really stupid like, Jeff, tell me about the 98 games, and you're like, well, I wasn't there, that would be a big
Right. Of
fail. So
course. Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Well, that's you're doing a great thing, and I support you very much. And Sarah Warren, she's learned how to skate. She
Yeah.
learned how to skate down the 100. I used to count her strokes, 42 strokes down the 100. Please skate, Sarah. Skate. You can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll get to him later, but ironically, those were the last words that Bobby Fenn said to me
Mm.
as I was doing a time trial, and he was about 70 meters down, and I went past, and he just turned and screamed at me, "Skate!"
Yeah.
He didn't like me running for 100 meters, but some things don't change.
Yeah. You start there. Cool.
Exactly. So thank you for all that.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
So we talked a little bit about your history and the fact that I would say you're a student of the game. You've been around the sport for a long time, and now you're spending a lot of time analyzing and looking very closely at skaters, etc. But I was curious if you would look back at you as a skater, knowing what you know now, what would you say about Jeff Klaiber, the skater, back when you were competing?
Well,
Yeah.
what I know about me competing and learning as a skater, I was never as talented as, say, a Nick Thomas or Dan Jansen or Bonnie Blair. So I had to be kind of analytical and cerebral growing up. I won national championships, and then I strived for the Olympic team. It took me 8 years. I tried 80, 84, finally 88. The thing that set me apart was my ability to analyze skating and figure out how to use my weird body, which is not great for speed skating, to utilize that on the ice in a way that makes sense for my anatomy. And that took a long time, Dan, because I've got a short upper torso, a long lower leg, and a short upper leg. So you look at guys like Dave Silk or Mike Woods or Sven Kramer, these guys, Shawnee Davis, long upper torso, relatively short legs. I'm the opposite. So people think, hey, you're tall, you're a great speed skater because you're tall. No. Mark Greenwald, he's like 5'4". He was one of my chief competitors in my whole career. And he had a longer stride than I did. So it has nothing to do with height. So it took me a while to figure out how to utilize my anatomy on the ice. And looking back on my career, I see a very breaking point because Mike Crow, I had so many great coaches: Peter Schotting, Peter Mueller, Mike Crow, Diane Holm, Mike Woods. And in fall of 87, I had an injury that changed everything. So
Hmm.
until that point, I was getting better every year. And then it kind of stopped.
Gotcha. Well, actually, that's interesting that you should mention that because a lot of times when I think about talking to somebody that's been to an Olympic Games, I think the knee jerk reaction is to tell me about the games, tell me about the opening ceremonies, tell me about the Olympic Village, and I think when we look at your 88 and 92 experience, I think the stories of how you got there maybe are more interesting and more meaningful to you than what actually took place when you showed up. Would you agree with that?
For sure. And what's cool is I'm sharing that with others. I'm a teacher at a Catholic school now, and one of the things we talk about is perseverance in the face of adversity. And of course, I never maximize my potential in the sport, Dan. And that's, it's, I could be bitter about it. And for a long time I was. However, I was I was able to get there. And the key lessons I learned from the things in skating are I can do it. And the reason I figured that out was I was so strong inside my head. I
Yeah.
got really, really used to working with nothing. When you get used to working with nothing, you can do anything. And when I had no basis. I was off the ice for 5 weeks before the 1988 Olympic trials with just running and doing single-legged squats in Mike Wood's basement. Yet I qualified for the team with the fourth fastest time ever at the Olympic rink. And that's because I had a great coach and because I had a great mindset. Wow. And after that, I had an injury, and it suppressed the rest of my career. Now we talk about 92. In 1992, I had not had a good race for 2 years. I skated in the 1989 World Championships. And since then, that's 2 years from fall of 91. I had nothing to show for anything. Yet I was sitting there for 6 months visualizing exactly what was going to happen at trials. And if I didn't do this, I was not going to move forward. And I committed myself to doing it. In fact, Dan, I'll share this with you. I haven't shared with many people. I remember when they extinguished the flame in 1988 in the Calgary Stampede Stadium. And they turned the flame off at the very end of the games, and then it's over. As they were extinguishing that flame, I said, when they light that thing up again, I'll be there in France. So that commitment, when they extinguish that, when they light that up, I committed myself to that, and it was a commitment to myself, and I honored that commitment, and that helped me through the 10,000 that got me to 92 games. I was not the skater I was, but it was really a mental thing. If you only watch the Olympics in speed skating, you say, hey, that guy got 24th. That guy must suck.
Yeah.
And you know what? Well, but back to the point about getting to 92, for me, it was totally mental and totally out of the blue. I mean, that was the most triumphant 15 minutes in my life. It really was, because I was going to Marquette grad school. It was really hard. I had no basis for making that team except for inside my head.
Yeah.
And with Coach Mike Woods behind me, and he said, you can do it. And we raced a plan 25 times one lap, at 10,025 laps. Hey, get lost in the race and kind of come back at the end, whatever. No, he said, you have to do 25 times one lap at this specific pace. Otherwise, you're staying home. And with 8 to go, I wasn't quite on pace, and he was pounding the ice with his fist and yelling at me. He took his gloves off. He had his bare hand on the ice, like pounding it, saying, you got to go now. Otherwise, Tamburino's going to kick your ass. And I went for it. And I remember my legs were screaming. It was 8 to go, Dan. And they were screaming. And I said, you know what? If you listen to that scream and give up right now, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I just poured through. And when I got through, these days they end up at 10,000. They're going like, hey, I want to pick up flowers. I collapsed. They had to carry me to my warm-ups, Dan. They had to carry me there. So that was a really triumphant thing, because my technique had been compromised by the injury, but my mental strength was just there.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you for showing that. And I think it's also interesting that Wooder's still there. And he's still yelling. Not quite as voraciously maybe, but I appreciate the fact that there's some people that have stuck around the sport this long. It's really cool to see. I guess I've been around a little while now, but I still think that's a neat aspect. I mean, there's so many people that come in and they, qualified for one Olympic trials, and then they never put skates on again. But it's nice to see some people, maybe they're starters or they're officials, but they're still around and supporting the sport.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of goes to what I said before about the sport being small and accessible, which is another thing that I think just makes it so great. One point
about that. I want to ask you about that, Dan.
Yeah.
About the point that you can get on the ice with Brittany Bowe and all those people. And that is very cool, because if you're a downhill skier, guess what? You can't do that. We go around in basically circles. So you get to see everybody all the time. And that's a really cool thing about speed skating, is you can learn. You're on the same venue. You can, if you're a downhill skier, you couldn't watch how somebody skis
Yeah.
unless you get videotape of it.
Yeah.
But
Not
we
up
can be
close.
out there in real time watching someone. You can actually track. I've done this. I've sat in the stands and tracked the Dutch workouts. I've tracked the Austrians' workouts. You can do that. So it's a great environment for learning. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, and what's interesting is I still haven't quite figured out why they're doing this, but the U.S. national team is starting their season really with a training camp in Milwaukee here in the middle of September. So
Yeah.
they're going to do our first 2 weeks of ice. They're going to be doing here, and I know in my head I will say the same thing I do every time that the elite skaters show up is I will be lacing up my skates and then I'll watch them come by and I'll say, God, how do they get that low?
Yeah.
It's always the
Yeah.
same thing. It doesn't matter if they're doing warm up laps or doing intervals. It
Right.
always just catches my eye, and yeah, I always think the same thing. I am not low enough.
Well, you're getting there.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to mention is I remember how I found you because it was right after Bob Fenn's untimely passing. And then somewhere, I think maybe on a U.S. speed skating site, I saw the tribute that you wrote, which was beautiful. And I think I asked a mutual friend of ours, hey, tell me about Jeff. And then I started seeing you because you took over coaching Theron Sands in his run to 18 Olympic trials. So I guess first off, tell me a little bit about your memories of Bobby, and then maybe transition that into the time that you spent with Theron and his performance at 18 trials.
Sure. Well, Bobby was an incredible cyclist, speed skater, and coach. And there's no one, in my estimation, who ever spent more time, more dedication on the ice than Bob Fenn. From like 1972 until 2017, he was there all the time. And all you had to do was say, Bobby, I want to work. Mr. Fenn, I want to work. And he'd take you on. It didn't matter who you were. He coached Olympic champions, Eric Flame, Shawnee Davis, so many others. So he was the best. He was really good. And one of the things he did great was not letting other people know how good he was. He was great with skaters, very firm. He's like, get off your ass and get to practice. So he didn't take any BS from people, but he was a great coach, a great technician. He knew how to train people. He's a great trainer, one of the greatest trainers, I'd say, outside of Peter Shouting, the best trainer I ever had. And beyond that, he was a guy who could do everything on his own. He was a champion in several sports before he became a coach. So he was walking the walk, Dan. He knew what to do. It wasn't just like he showed up as some coach who never skated. He knew exactly how to compete. And I'll tell you how fierce his competitive streak was. In 1974 at the Nationals in St. Paul, Minnesota, on Lake Como, I was 12 years old, and he and Barth Levy, who was another senior guy, legendary skater, they're great. They're chief rivals. They're like literally ripping their hairs out in the warming house because they thought they got called. Like, I think Bobby got called on a foul. It was like he was. They were beating each other up in the warming house. So he was not afraid of confronting you, and that happened. He didn't beat anybody else up, but he was not afraid of confronting, for example, in meetings, ideas that he thought were stupid. He had his method. It definitely worked, and he helped thousands and thousands of skaters. So his legacy is there's no one like him. You'll never hear his voice again in the Oval, but he was so important to so many people, and all you had to do was show up and be ready to work, and he would coach you. And that's the great thing.
So with that, you took over the duties with Theron. How did that happen? Did he just make a phone call to you and say, "Hey, what do I do now?" Or did you guys have a discussion about it?
Well, I was close with Bob, my whole life. And when he was coaching Theron, I would give Bob some technical tips.
Okay.
I'd watch Theron's corners and say, hey, maybe you should think about this. So I was already involved in his coaching of Theron. Then, when that happened, Theron had some trust in me because I'd already been helping Bobby and him.
Gotcha.
So it was a pretty easy transition. It was not easy for Theron because Theron likes things the way Theron likes things. He's like a lot of us. Like when you're an athlete, you want things to stay the same. Of course, you're going to grow and change, but he wanted Bobby. Bobby was his crutch, not a crutch in a bad way, but when you go to a competition, you want to have all those things in place.
Yeah.
You want to have everything. It's your ritual. So his ritual was really interrupted. Plus, Bobby was one of the best friends Theron ever had.
Yeah.
So it was really, really hard for him. And we did the best we could, for a year and a half or so after that to the Olympic trials. But it was great. I felt an honor to carry on Bob's tradition and help Theron get better. He's getting a couple personals under me, but I guarantee you he would have done better with Bobby because he would have been more comfortable.
Yeah, those were interesting times. It seems like so long ago, but really not that far.
Yeah.
So another thing conversations that I get into with my own coach from time to time, because he's another guy that's been around a long time, is the evolution of the sport. So, I mean, I look at things like the move to indoor, clap blades, of course, and maybe more recent than I really think it would be is this move to having people that are specializing in a distance where, back in the day there wasn't such a thing as a sprinter, which I still think is so weird. But I guess give us a couple thoughts on the evolution of the sport.
Massive question, Dan. Well, first of all, it went from outside to inside, then from inside to claps, and then specialization too. So those are huge, huge areas we could take a long time to cover. But they did specialize in sprint because the World Sprint Championships began, I believe, in early 80s. They never had a World Sprint Championship until 1980. So it was only World All-Arounds. So that's one thing. So specialization is key. Look at Eric Heiden. I don't think anyone's ever going to do that again. This guy won every distance at an Olympics. Take Sven Kramer, put him with, Laurent Dubreuil.
Yeah.
Put those together and you'll have it. Or Niels van der Poel combined with Laurent Dubreuil, and that's not going to happen.
No.
It's not going to happen. So the sport has evolved, but Eric's achievement will stand. I think in any era it would. As far as the claps go and indoor, that has totally changed everything because what's happened is we used to need to be big and bulky and strong outside. You're fighting frost, you're fighting rain, you're fighting wind, you're fighting all these things. Moreover, you couldn't calibrate your training because you didn't know how fast or slow the ice was. So you just went out there and kicked ass for 2 hours. I'm doing 34s today. I'm doing 37s yesterday. I don't know what it is. Just work. All you have to do is work. Yeah. So it was about work. Now it's about precise outcomes in every workout on the ice surface, and the ice surface is sacred. So that's totally different. It's like a laboratory out there now, and the skaters know it, the coaches know it, and what you do is you bring everything to the ice and you have a plan. And we did not have that plan when I was competing up until 1992 because it just wasn't available. Yeah. We had indoor ice, but we didn't have the consistency of ice conditions we have now. So it's really evolved. So you can scientifically design a plan to train and have consistency day in, day out. And the last thing about that, Dan, is body type. We used to be big and bulky. Look at the old tapes. I've got some guys like Sergei Kolebnikov. Like, look at him. He's like a linebacker on the ice. Like, you don't have to have that bulk anymore. It's about relative strength. It's about relative strength to your body weight. And you see a lot of the Asian skaters are lighter, especially the Chinese in the last Olympics. The guy who won the 500. These guys are really slim. It's like their waist is like this.
Yeah.
Like that's how big their waist is. So it's not about absolute strength anymore to fighting through snowy ice and wind. It's about relative weight relative to your body strength. And And if you have that ratio really good, you can just fly out there. It's aerodynamic and it's efficient. So it's changed a lot. I mean, I've seen the body type go from, endomorph or ectomorph, whatever those, there are three kind of body types.
Yeah, yeah.
Big bodies to slimmer bodies, and that's kind of becoming the rule.
Yeah. That's interesting because, well, maybe this is a good time to transition a little bit and talk about the main feature of why we got together here, with your channel, because you talk about that a lot on your channel. It's something I never really thought about. You oftentimes you make references to people's specific anatomy, and you can see that this person is narrow, so they're doing this, and I think that's really interesting. So of course, Speed Skating Deconstructed, a channel that you started 2 years ago.
No, it's only October 8th last year. So
really, okay,
11 months ago.
Yeah, you've put out so much content. I guess it just my assumption is it has been a year and a half or two. So I guess maybe for people that haven't seen the channel, I've got a little bit of a clip here of some of your work. So we'll just play this quick, and then I really want to get into, I guess the thing that I'm most interested to hear about after we play the clip is just the reach that you have globally, which I think is fantastic. So let's watch a little bit of Jordan Stolz.
But the remarkable thing here is he's building into this turn so hard. A lot of people wait, set up the turn, and then maybe, over here on the apex start building. Jordan is building this right from the get-go. He's building into this turn as well as out of it. A lot of people wait, and you can't do that anymore. And again, these angles are just so pristine. And it's just beautiful to watch. You could stop this virtually anywhere and you'd have an icon of a speed skating poster right here. It just doesn't get any better. Really working. Again, we talk about no release. What do we mean when a no release means? You don't want to drift out and then come back in. And Jordan keeps the pressure on the vortex, keeps the pressure on the apex, and keeps the centrifugal and centripetal forces working against each other so well. He slingshots out of this corner big time.
So there's just a little example of your work. So since you've started the channel, you and I have talked about this a little bit. One of the things that just really hit me is the number of countries, and I guess it's really two things. It's the global reach combined with just the amount of emails that you're fielding from people. So what are people writing you about? What are they saying? Just tell us about it.
Well, it's great. I get a lot of comments on almost every video I post, Dan, and they're always very good questions. In fact, they get my brain working. So it's a really good dialogue, and that's what I want to engender here, is a dialogue between myself and the skaters, because I'm always learning. That's the key thing, and I'm sure you're the same way. We're always learning. So someone sends a comment back to me about a video I posted. Well, I disagree with that. I don't think, like, for example, there's Emil 72, there's someone over in Norway who disagrees with my idea that aerodynamics you shouldn't have your head below your butt, when you're skating.
Yeah.
Aerodynamics is the way it's going to go. So we have a dialogue back and forth respectfully. But the other thing is, I've connected with skaters and they send me videos, and I send them back like within a day, because I started the channel because there are a lot of people saying Tinset, Norway, or, in some small town in the Netherlands that don't have a coach.
Really?
A lot of people out there don't have coaches. I have a lot of master skaters, a lot of your competitors, Dan. Sorry, I'm helping them. But they're sending me videos and I send them back like within a day. So it's really vibrant, and it's great because I've got skaters in Colombia contacting me, Netherlands, Norway, Russia, all over the place. So it's been really gratifying, not for me, but because it's exactly what I wanted to do with the channel, is share exactly the thing I know most in the world with people who need it. And it's been really great.
Yeah, that's cool. It's you really put the pressure on me, because every time I turn around, you've got a new video. like I can't keep up. But clearly for you, it's maybe a little bit easier because people are shooting content at you, and you're able to just pick something off, think about something you want to talk about, and then shoot it. I have to chase somebody down and get
Yeah.
them to agree, and meet me at a specific time, and then we have to not have technical issues.
Yeah.
But
No,
I think it's fantastic that you produce so much content, and you get into details, and I also like the fact that you're committed to the fact that you're going to keep learning and that you like to be challenged. And I think that's probably what's going to continue to make this excellent work.
well, well, you're the same way. You're an engineer in real life, right, Dan?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So it's all about learning. And, if you sit back and go, I know everything, forget it.
yeah,
I learn as much from the people that comment on the stuff I throw out there, and like, well, wait a minute. And I think about it, and well, usually I'm right, but but sometimes I'm not. No, it's great. So yeah, it's been really great to connect and to not have to deal with, the politics of NGBs or parents. It's great because I can purely give what I know to skaters who want to receive that. And
yeah.
that's the great thing about the age we're in, Dan, as you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
You don't have to leave the house. You can sit
right,
there and look it over and spend your time with it. And maybe you see
yeah,
something immediately. Maybe you don't, but you don't have to get in the car, drive to the Pettit.
right.
Like you said, deal with politics and the burden of having to deliver value against a
Yeah,
dollar that somebody's giving you.
right.
Changes the game. So
Yeah, this channel is a complete opposite of that whole equation.
yeah.
So it's great. It's just, you give what you get and you get what you give. So it's great.
All right. So here's my surprise for you.
Uh-oh.
So one of the things I admire about you is that you have a wealth of knowledge of a lot of different skaters across the course of time, and I think you're also somebody that if you're going to look at somebody or something, you're going to want to offer some interesting and unique comments or analysis. Okay, so right out off the top is somebody that maybe is. A guy you may have even lined up against this guy, Uwe Jens Mai.
Probably the most pristine sprinter in history. Amazing flexibility, amazing execution into the ice, and total discipline. Everything was engineered. Like, you're an engineer, Dan. That guy was engineered to be a sprinter, and also a really, really nice guy.
Oh, cool. So yeah, I'm coached by Dave Cruikshank now, and there is no end to the number of times that I've heard about Uwe Jens Mai.
Yeah.
Actually, the first time he ever made a reference to Uwe, and I said I didn't know who he was very insulted. So I had to go do some research on Uwe so that I would not be embarrassed in the future.
It's pronounced in German, Uwe.
Yeah, Uwe Jens Mai.
Yeah.
So here's a guy that I've been around this gentleman a couple times, but never actually really had the pleasure to talk to him. But when I've watched him, I'm amazed at, truly amazed at his cadence, I would say. So Tucker Fredericks.
Oh my gosh, he's one of the greatest sprinters. In fact, he could have been better had he kept skating. But I was lucky to be coaching in that time, from like 2012 to 2010 to 2017 when he was skating. He had the most profound, quick pressure into the ice that I've ever seen. And when he was on, he was one of those guys who was on or off. Honestly, he was like really on, really off. But he's serpentine, like snaking around the ice, like really getting into it, and just so fun to watch because he is so quick. But he wasn't quick like running. Like,
Yeah.
I've had arguments with U.S. Speed Skating about some skaters on their program right now about they run too much. But Tucker was always high cadence, and that's a great observation, Dan. High cadence, but great execution in the ice, and just such a barrel out of the corner. Great skater.
Yeah, I feel like, I'm no historian, but I kind of feel like we didn't get enough of him.
Me too. Yeah, I mean, he won the World Cup in Salt Lake or Calgary in before the Olympics, like second or won it. And again, we never good Olympics in 2014. Everyone knows. So, but yeah, he's a great skater.
So this one's a little. I should put an asterisk next to this one because I already know you have a skater crush on this gal, but Marit Leenstra.
Oh, yeah. Well, this skater was a great junior in 2007, 2008, skated through 2014, I think, and 2015. And she had, like, talk about anatomy. We talked about that before. Really long upper body, short lower leg, long upper leg. So if you see her in their turn, I've featured it in my second video, I think, on the channel. But she has the best timing of any corners. I've never seen anybody do it better than her. And just if you want to figure out how to do a great turn, watch that video because Marit Leenstra was great. She was a good all-rounder, mainly a 1,500-meter skater, and did everything right. And it was just, it's art. It's art in motion. And that's the great thing about it. Like, watch that. And if you can mimic that, Dan, mimic that in your turns, you'll be good.
I will go much faster. So I guess this guy I think about not so much maybe about technique, but way more about just grit and never giving up. Maybe you already know who I'm talking about, but Chad Hedrick.
Well, talk about upending a sport. I mean, he came in, and within 1 year of him climbing on the ice, he won the World All-Around Championships. Think about that. That would be like you coming from hockey.
Yeah,
like,
I did not.
I'm a hockey player, and now I'm on the ice, and I won the Worlds, So Chad Hedrick, I interviewed him for a book I'm trying to work on, but he said if he gets second, he lost. So his fierce determination is unparalleled by almost anybody. And that's why he became a champion. It isn't because he was so skilled. He wasn't. But he knew how to put pressure into the ice and never give up. And I've got 2 or 3 videos of him on my channel. But he does certain things very well. His turns were really, really good. Straightaways were kind of messed up, but he's an inliner.
Yeah.
But the coolest thing was he showed up and just kicked the Dutch's ass. And, nothing personal against the Netherlands. Okay. But no, he was actually an exemplary figure for how to just have no fear. He had no fear, and he knew. Look at his 1,000 meter in 2010. He was not expected to win. He almost caught up to the Korean. I can't remember who he's paired with. Yeah. He almost caught up to him. And check out the crossover. He's like doing all this nutty stuff to catch up to the guy. He almost did. That's Chad Hedrick. So Chad Hedrick is a remarkable person in speed skating because he can learn so much from his desire.
Yeah.
So his desire was incredible. And just to come to the ice. And the other thing about inliners to ice, Dan, those guys are so strong because they're skating on pavement. They're skating on rocks and gravel and all this stuff. You get to the ice, it's like, hey, this is easy. So, it really is. It's like, I'm cruising on this ice surface. This is totally easy. So for a guy like him, he's like, I may not be perfect, but guess what? I can fight my ass off and kick ass to the end. And that's what he did.
So this next skater, we talked about in the beginning how we get to, share the ice with people. And this skater, I didn't know she was going to be there. I was at the Pettit for, maybe it was a time trial. I don't even remember. Anyway, she went past me, and it was just kind of like the sound, like, caught my attention. And I'm like, well, I don't really recognize her. So then she came back around again, and then I finally got close enough. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So before I say her name, I think one of the things that's interesting about this skater is she had tremendous success, but she had such an odd such an odd technique. Heather Richardson.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, Heather was, she broke all the models of what you're supposed to do in the straightaway. So, I talked to Ryan Shimabukuro, her coach, for a long time, and people are saying she's gonna get on her right. What I think is her
Yep.
right side. She never
Yep.
got on.
Yep.
But again, we talk about anatomy, and does it work for you? It does. And the reason it worked for Heather, very simple, is because, and I work with Jonathan Cook, one of the greatest all-rounders we've had in, really, really great distance skater. But he had trouble in the straightaways. Now, just use this as an example. If you can get from the corner to the next straightaway without producing any problems, go forward without using energy, and get to the turn and build your turn. That's what Heather Richardson did. So despite her flaw in the straightaway, she could get from corner to corner without slowing down and without using a lot of energy. So she figured that out. So it wasn't pretty. She knows this. She did not have pretty technique in the straightaway. It's against all the rules. However, because her corners were so amazing, like I was talking on a video yesterday about Oleg Bozhev, like the human vacuum. Look at Heather's turns. Heather's turns made up, and then more than made up for her straightaways. So her corners were so good. Look at distance per stride on her straightaway. So that's why she can get away with it. And she had, she was tall, she was very strong, but her corners were the model for U.S. speed skating for probably the last 10 years. She knew how to do a turn, really early reversal arm, right into the ice, and great lines. So, yeah, I mean, it proves that you don't have to be perfect to make it go. You just have to work with what you have. And that's the great thing about speed skating,
All right, I got one last one. And so this is I'll say my current favorite skater of all time, because I've probably had a few, but this particular skater, I have, as a masters skater, I have a tendency to really focus a lot more on the ladies, because the times that they skate are maybe a little bit more relatable to me. Like, I can't sit there and look at Jordan Stoltz and equate anything I'm doing to what he's doing. But this particular skater, from a technique standpoint, fitness, and really, well, I'll talk about it in a minute, but Miho Takaki.
Oh, well, that is the most brilliant, I would say, top three ever, as far as brilliance of applying pressure to the ice, getting rest within pushes in her push cycle, and also calibrating her pace so well across so many different distances. So she is beautiful, and she's so small. We talked about this absolute strength versus relative strength. She's a tiny powerhouse, and it's so great to see, because she's off that skate onto the other skate, just producing power and releasing tension when she needs to. And that's the great thing. I have a video up about her. It's called The Dance. You watch her skate, and it's like an art form, Dan. So I'm glad you brought her up, because she is, man, woman, alien, it doesn't matter. She is so good at what she does, and such a great model of how to utilize your strengths within your own anatomy and body and make that happen in the ice, because she's small, but she gets longer distance per push than people that are 7 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier. You know what I mean? Because she's on top. You have to be on top of your blade. When you're on top of your blade, move with that. You can turn it over quick, and then you get rest, and then you can explode down in. And that's what she does so well. And her turns are ridiculously good. Her entries, her exits, track pattern, I mean, she's mastered it. I mean, you see her enter a turn in the 1500. She's basically on the outer blocks, but she comes down on the apex and just hammers, and look out world. She's so good. I'm glad you brought her up, because she's so fun to watch. I love watching that skater skate.
Well, this was some fun. Thanks for hanging out. Congratulations on the growth of your channel and also all the interactions that you're having with all these people around the globe. I think that's super cool. Keep up the great work. We're going to keep looking for more updates. You're probably going to release a video as soon as we hang up because it seems like there's something new every 5 hours on Speed Skating Deconstructed. So thanks for your contributions to the sport and keep it going.
Well, thank you, Dan, for having me, and I wish you so much success for your channel because you fill a void that, no one shares stuff that you're sharing with your listeners about personal stories of great speed skaters. So thank you.
All right, thanks. That's Jeff Klaiber, and we are out of here.